you ever wondered how top rail no climb is built? Well, in this video today, we are going to show you exactly step by step how to build a 5-foot top rail with no climb fence. So stay tuned and we'll show you in this video exactly how to do it. This is the line we are going to be working from the end of that archway post all the way down. You can see down there by the palm trees, there's a fence post. That's the line that we're going to. Roughly it's about 220 feet. So what we're doing to start, we're stringing our string line. This is the first stake that I'm going to put into the ground. So we're going off of this post here. This is in line with our property line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically tie the string line around this corner and it's going to stretch off this. So I'm going to offset this stake so that I could just stretch some string line and it'll just run perfect with where I need it. So let's get this stake in. That should be good enough. And then we'll get our string line tied on here. And then we will go down to the other end, put another stake, and then that'll get us the perfect inline string line that we need. All right, and we finally made the long trek back to the other end of the property. I got another stake and another hammer, and this post is on the far side of the property, and this is on the property line. So what we're gonna do is offset this stake again so that we can just stretch the string line just on this side of the post and bring it on back. So we'll set this one right about here. Get it in there nice and solid because there is going to be quite a bit of pressure on this because we're going to start to stretch this string line. Got my string line here and we're going about 220 feet like I said. So you're going to want to pull it nice and tight. It could take a second to get there, but it's kind of a breezy day as well. So with that being said, we'll need to get this pretty darn tight. But there is some tricks too, that even with a breeze, that we could make sure that the holes are nice and straight. It's not too bad, so I think we're going to be able to get it no problem. The breeze kind of comes and goes, so let's get this string line nice and tight. Make sure you're wearing gloves. You can see there it just slipped through my hand. If you're not wearing gloves, it could really eat up your hands. It's happened to me once or twice before in all my fence building I've done. But yeah, just get it nice and tight. Once you get it, I mean fairly tight, you don't need to like go too crazy. Then you wrap it around your stake. And I'll show you a close-up of this just so you can kind of get an idea. So as you can see here, I already got my fence line pulled pretty darn tight, but I want to show you how to get this string line to stay where you want. So pull it tight, make sure it's nice and tight, wrap it around the stake a few times. You want to go a little bit higher. Like I got some weeds growing down the property line, so my string line's up set a little bit higher. Wrap it around 2 or 3 times, and then you're going to get the string line with all the tension on it, and you're going to get some slack, and then you're going to pull and lift over the wraps that you just put around the stake. So let me try and get out of the view. So get some slack, pull it up and over, and then that will allow it to hold itself in place. All right, we got our string line set up on a post. You can see here I got some weeds, so we're just trying to clear that. It's kind of hard to see that string line, but it goes all the way down to that other end. You can see here I have a corner, so we went back to the back, and right over there is going to be another fence line going right across down over there basically it's going to be a riding arena over here. But so I had to put up one more string line because there is going to be an intersection right there. And I needed to know where this post was in that corner so that I could space all my posts out correctly in this section. So now we're going to start laying out our holes. There is multiple ways to mark and to do this. You don't have to use, like I'm going to mark my holes today with a rattle can of spray paint. Depending on your soil, this stuff doesn't work very good. Like if it's real dry and the material's real loose, when you spray, it doesn't mark real well. So if this doesn't work for you, if you don't want to spend money on paint, you could always just put an X in the dirt with like a shovel or your foot. I've done that before, but today for my viewers, I want to make sure that you could see where we're going to mark these nice and clear. So I went and got some paint. So this is the corner that I'm going to first start to work off of because this is an intersection, and I want to make sure that this post is where I need it to be. And so I'm going to mark, my posts are going to be every 10 feet. So from this section here, I'm going to go where the two string lines intercross over one another. My spot's there, and I'm going to go 10 feet off of there. So this is how I'm marking it. Just an X. Right in the center is where I am going to auger my holes. So we got the first hole marked here, and I'm literally just going to get a tape measure. Like I said, we're going to go every 10 feet. For the majority of the fence, there's going to be a small barn right here, and the fence post spacing is going to be every 15 feet. So for 1, 2, 3 holes, I'm going to do every 15 feet. Pretty easy to do by yourself. You just got to kind of make sure the end of your tape measure is where you need it. And then mark out your other one. So another 15 foot. Perfect. And then the rest now are going to be every 10 feet. Actually going to come over here and start from the front of the property. Get my spacing right, just to make sure that, you know, people driving down the road, that the post spacing is nice and even, looks good. All right, now we got all of our post holes marked where we want it with the spray paint. So we're going to go through now and auger them and get them all cleaned out and dug out, and then we can start setting posts. All right, so we got our post holes marked. Now, this morning I went to Home Depot. Gonna spoil myself a little bit today. I got this groundhog auger. This is actually the auger that started Seven Peaks. This is the first piece of big equipment we ever bought. So I also wanted it to kind of be like a throwback, you know. And I'm also designing this video for like just a general do-it-yourself. There is multiple other ways to dig out your post holes. My favorite way is a skid steer with an auger, but since I'm just doing this fence line today, I didn't want to go to that extreme. Just a basic towable auger works great. I'm not a big fan of the like single or double man augers. Um, depending on your ground in Arizona, some of the ground's a little hard, some of the ground has rock in it. I got a little bit of rock in my property, so I felt like this was going to be the best fit for this job today. But I got an 8-inch drill bit. I'm going to clean the holes out a little bit once I get them all augered. They might be a little bit bigger by the time I'm done. And I'm going to go in about, I like to stay anywhere around 2.5 to 3 feet. It's a 5-foot tall fence. Generally speaking, they say that you want your posts a third of what your fence height is. Mine's only going to be 5 feet. So do the math on that. Foot and 3/4. So I'm going to set my posts in the ground roughly in between 2.5 to 3 feet, maybe 2 foot in some areas, depending on how far this auger gets me. But it should be plenty sufficient. This isn't going to be a fence that gets abused, just a perimeter fence. So let's start augering these holes, and then we'll get them cleaned out, and then we'll start setting the posts. So here's a good example of one of our holes. So the post is going to be on this side. So you want a majority of your hole on this side. However, you do want some on this side just to get concrete on that side. But you can see how the hole is mostly on this side where the post is going to be, which is perfect. That hole there is about 2 foot deep, maybe more. We'll get a tape measure and check it out. You can see our 2 foot mark there. We're about 3 inches above that to the grade of the dirt. It's about 2 foot 3 inches and about 10 inches in diameter. So perfect little footing hole for our post. So now that we double checked all of our holes, we make sure that our string line is going to work, that our holes that we augered, make sure that everything lines up and that the posts are going to get a sufficient amount of concrete all the way around it. So now that we got that all checked out, everything looks good down the entire line. So what we're going to do then is I'm not going to set my posts in the hole. I'm going to just lay them out by each hole. The reason I'm doing that is I'm doing this by myself. So I'm going to wet set the posts, meaning I'm going to mix the concrete first and then pour it in. And then I'm going to set my post and make it plumb with the string line once I get the concrete poured in. So let's lay out our posts, and then from there we'll start pouring our concrete, and then yeah, we'll just move on to the next step. You can see here I'm setting some 3x3 posts. There's going to be a little barn right here, little mare motel. We're eventually going to build and get a video on, but that's what these square tubing columns are for. And then we'll keep working our way down to the 2 3/8 pipe that we're using for this fence. Got one at that hole. So I got the trailer pulled over here with the concrete on it. I got a pallet of concrete. Today I'm going to be using 60-pound bags. Normally when I dry set, I use 80-pound bags. But the 60-pound definitely is easier to manage. 20-pound difference, it makes a big difference. A couple other tools I'm using, obviously a concrete mixer, and then a level. And then also I'm using a Sawzall blade. You might be asking, like, what do I use this for? And this is actually to cut open the concrete bags to pour into the mixer. This is the best thing that I found. I know it sounds weird, but when you use like a pocket knife or something like that, they tend to just jam up, and when you shut and close and stuff, yeah. So this is what I found to work the best to cut open the concrete. So let's mix our first bag, and then we'll go set our first posts, and then we'll go from there. So we'll start with just a few bags. We'll stack them here on the edge of the trailer just to get us a good start. I'm going to start with 2 bags per hole, so roughly 120 pounds per hole. Alright, so I just set it on the edge, get my Sawzall wood blade out, slice it open, and voila, pour it on in there, set the bag down, ready to rock. Got my hose, turn the mixer on. Alright, there's one bag. Should be able to get 2 bags in there. It's been a while since I've mixed concrete with the mixer. I think you can get 2 60-pound bags in. I don't think you can get 2 80-pounders in. Oops. Messed up that bag. But we'll get it out. Spray a little water in there before you start to mix. All right, we got our concrete right there. And I normally like to spray some water in both in the wheelbarrow and in the mixer, just so that nothing really starts to set up. Keep it nice and full of water. Not full of water, but just plenty of water so nothing starts to stick. I also leave it running until I get another one going. All right, you can see we got a couple posts set. I apologize, started going to town and forgot to move the camera. But anyway, basically what we're doing is I already poured a bag of concrete in this hole. From here, we're just going to basically make this post nice and plumb, basically to where it's level, going east and west, north and south in both directions while touching the string line. So we're gonna set it right in there. The good thing is with like wet setting posts is even if you set it in there slightly wrong or in the wrong spot, you could always adjust it. But anyway, just wiping off some dirt that was on the post. It's kind of been sitting for a minute. So basically all I am is getting it level, which is going to make it plumb, right, on this string line. So I'm making sure that it's level going this way and then also going level this way. But the most important part is making sure that it's first level with the string line, and then from there you could adjust it this way accordingly. So we are pretty right on there. There is a little bit of a breeze, so I'm going to double check my string line, make sure it's good. So we got that about where I want it. Like I said, this is wet set, so it's not like too important that it's perfect right now. You're going to want to keep coming back to it and double checking like I'm going to do right here. So like I said, there is a little bit of a breeze. Just going to check these posts, make sure they're setting where I want. On the string line, I'm going to walk down here. I have my very end post already set. So with the breeze, my string line could fluctuate a little bit. So as I'm going down the line, I'm constantly checking to be sure that all my vertical posts are still in line with one another from that end to the very far end. So let's come check this one on the very north end of the property. Make sure that it's where you want it. It looks good. And then looking down, eyeballing it, they all line up really good with that very last post on the property. So yeah, we're doing all right. So like I said, these ones are starting to set pretty good. So pretty soon you're not going to have to worry too much about these posts. But you are going to want to come back a couple times and check the post that you set last to make sure that it's still setting really good. Pretty happy with these posts where they're at. They're nice and plumb and true where I want them. Beautiful. Awesome. And we'll come back to this post here in a minute. I do like to make sure that it's not leaning on the string line. So when I go and mix more concrete, I pull it off of it a little bit, just to make sure that when I go and set the next post that it's not leaning on the string line. And it's obviously not going to be good on that side because I'm getting ready to set the next post. So let's go mix more concrete, and then the process is just going to continue and continue and continue. So I'll also show you a close-up of what I'm looking for on the post, and yeah, we'll just keep moving forward. But so far it's looking really good. Everything's in line and I like it. All right, as you can see here, we got all of our posts set. So the very next step is to find the height of our top rail on the post, and we're going to cut it and mark it with the saddle that you're going to see here. But that's the next step, is to find the height of the top rail and then cut the post. So let's get on with it, and we'll show you how to do that next. So it may be kind of hard to see on the camera angle, but we're gonna start setting our height from this post. There is a slight slope going up to our gate there. So basically with that incline from here to there, we're gonna start with our straight line on this post all the way down to the south side of their property. So this is going to be a 5-foot tall fence with the top rail, right? Because we're going to stretch 5-foot no climb. So the top rail is going to be 2 3/8 of an inch. So basically, I'm going to want to figure my post with the top rail welded on is going to be at 5 foot. So I need to take 2 3/8 off 60 inches, which is 57 5/8. And then I'm going to put that mark there. And then once we set that top rail, that's going to get us the 60-inch height that we want. So you can see, got my tape measure. 60 inches is here. That's going to be our top rail. So we need to go down to 57 5/8, right about there. And we're going to use that's just going to be our starting mark. And then I'm going to run my string line at the height. So I'm going to make my mark here. I'm going to go down to the south end, make a mark. And then from there, we'll stretch the string line. And then that string line is going to get us our straight line across the top. And then we'll be able to mark the rest of our posts from there. And then we'll come back and also do these 4 posts going up to the gate with the slight incline. All right, I'm back here at the south end of the property where I forgot we already had our top rail set, so I don't even have to make a mark. Basically what we're going to do is go off the bottom of the 2 3/8 rail, because that is what we're going to need to saddle and cut the line going from our south fence line to the north where the gate was. So we're just going to get the wraparound, put a mark here, and then go from there. So as you can see here, we got our string line tied up onto this post. We got it kind of where we want it. I'm going to run it down and stretch it onto the north side of the property, and then we'll come back and double check it. We'll get everything in line, and then we'll be able to start marking all of our posts. So let's string this line all the way down to the north end and go from there. All right, so we're here on the south end. We just got our wire, or our string line, stretched all the way down. We're gonna set this one about where we want it, which is right about there to the bottom of this 2 3/8 top rail that I have set. And then that's gonna get us where we want to go all the way down. All right, here we got our string line pulled up to the north end of the property. I'm gonna just take it off and get it. Now we're gonna try and get it as tight as we can, just so there's no sag in the line, so that we can get a nice straight line across. So we're gonna just get this thing as tight as we can, and then wrap it around our post and go from there. You don't want to go like extremely tight, because then you'll just snap the line. Get it pretty darn tight. Get it lined up with where you want it. Wrapped around your post. So now that we got our string line to height where we want it, what I'm going to do is just go down and make sure that all my heights are correct. So, meaning I'm at that close to the 57 5/8 mark, so that when I weld my top rail on, I'm not low. So when I stretch that no climb wire, I don't have to dig out basically any dirt on the base. So I'm going to just walk down, double check, make sure, because the the ground is always fluctuating. It's not totally perfect. So I'm going to go and make sure that every post that I mark and cut, that it's going to be sufficient to the height that I need. So let's go down, measure everything, make sure everything's good. If everything's good, then we'll go through and mark everything, and then it'll be ready to cut. So what we're gonna do is our string line, now that I've figured everything, it's the height that I want, and I really like the plane that it's going in. From there, I'm just gonna mark right where my pink string line hits my post. And then that's gonna give me my line that I'm gonna work off to torch the post. So obviously your pink line is right in line with where you want it. So I normally just hold my piece of chalk right about where I want it, move the string line a little bit, do a nice line, make sure that that's right where I want it, and then we're good from there. So that is going to be the step. Next step, I'm going to go all the way down my fence line. The only thing I'm not going to mark, obviously, is my 3x3 post, because that's going to be different. My rails are going to be a little bit different because I'm going to eventually build it into a barn. But for now, I'm going to just do all the 2 3/8 posts, and then it'll get me the perfect line that we want, and then we can start setting top rail. All right, so now we got our pipe guide. Sometimes I refer to a wraparound. So I got my pipe guide on. I got my line marked on my string line. Had to get some sharper chalk, sharpened it with my grinder. I like to do this, I like a more fine point, just so I don't know, it's just easier for me to mark it that way. So first what I'm gonna do is do a straight wraparound line around my post. That's gonna get me like the working line to work off of, so that I could start basically marking out my saddle. So what we're gonna do is use the flat side of the wraparound, right? That's gonna give me a straight line all the way around it. And then from there, that's the height that I'm gonna adjust the bottom of my saddle to. And we'll do a closer up video. But first of all, like I said, we wrapped the pipe guide wraparound. I do also like to normally take the string line down since I already have my marks and it's not gonna affect it anymore now. I normally do take my string line down, but in this case I didn't. But basically I'm gonna line the bottom of my saddle of the pipe guide with my line, and then I'm gonna basically just eyeball down the line to make sure that my saddle is gonna allow this top rail to sit perfect and make a straight line going down my fence line. Just kind of eyeball it to make sure that it's in line with the remainder of my post down the line. And then once I get that, I do my mark, which is going to get me my saddle. And that's what I'm going to cut off, basically everything above this white line. So that's that. This is my line. I'm not going to cut that, so you can just discard that. All you're going to do is cut the line of the saddle layout. So yeah, let's do a close-up of how I did that. And then I'm going to also take the string line down because it's just going to make it easier to work with going down the line. You see, I got my string line loosened up so I can move it out of my way. I'm going to use the flat end first to get a straight wraparound line around my post. Go all the way around that. You can see where a sharp piece of chalk makes a big difference in this. This gives you a more fine line to work with, which is what I like. And now we're going to do the flip side. So the saddle end, get it in line with my other post going that way, and then do my saddle mark. There we have it. Now we're just going to do that down the remainder of the way, and we'll be ready to start cutting our posts. We got all of our posts marked to height that we wanted. Now I'm going to start cutting with an oxyacetylene torch. There are multiple different options to cut your saddle or your cope into this pipe. My personal favorite, at least for this thickness, is an oxyacetylene torch. Just seems to be the quickest for me. For a thinner gauge, you could use a bandsaw, you can use an angle grinder, you could use a plasma cutter. The only thing that takes is a compressor or air to run your plasma cutter. But yeah, this is my personal favorite, the oxyacetylene cutting torch. Like I said, this is 1/4 inch wall. Some of it varies a little bit thicker or a little bit lighter. So for this thickness, I like the oxyacetylene cutting torch. So we'll get started. I'll kind of give you some close-ups and show you how I'm doing it. This is just an overall view of how to do top rail no climb, so I'm not going to get too deep in an oxyacetylene torch. Kind of make sure you have these nice glasses, make a fashion statement. So once I get it cut, I just set it up there to make sure that it fits good. If there's any like touch up that I need to do, I'll go through with the torch. But this all seems to fit pretty darn good. There's a little bit of a slag that I could just break off with this piece. Other than that, it fits good. We'll show you a close up and keep going. We'll keep moving. The slag breaks off pretty easy for the most part. Sometimes you get some that hang a little bit. But yeah, sits pretty darn good on there. We went through, we cut all of our posts to the height that we wanted. Now it's time to set and weld the top rail. This is another one of my favorite things to do, is weld on the top rail. It's always fun to be underneath the welding hood. So let's start welding on the top rail. The biggest thing that you're going to want to make sure while welding on this top rail is that your posts are nice and plumb and true and level. Top rail, not so much, because we're not running off of a level. We're running off of the grade of the ground. So you're not going to want to worry too much about level on your rail. It should be pretty good based on your cuts. So the biggest thing is make sure that your posts are nice and plumb. And that's really the only thing that I'm going to be checking. There's another, when I weld a joint together, I use part of a jack stand to line them up, which I'll show you. But let's fire up the welder. We'll start welding, get this top rail welded on, and then I'll show you a couple little things here and there throughout the video. So let's fire up the welder and start welding. So you can see here, this is a part of a jack stand, and I cut a piece of 2 3/8 pipe. I use it for when there's two pieces of pipe coming together, so that you can get them lined up just right. So what I do is I kind of just figured like my height and how much thread I had on this jack stand, threaded piece, and then I cut this 2 3/8 pipe so it would work all throughout the fence that I've been building. So we just as you're going, just make sure that these pipes are lined up, and then that I always just like, once I get it kind of where I think it's good, I look down it and make sure that it all runs nice and even down the entire line. So I always like to go just a hair higher than what you really need, because it will, once you start welding and once you let this jack stand go, it will settle a little bit. So I just go a hair higher. But other than that, it's pretty simple, pretty basic, but a great tool when you have two joints coming together in the middle of a post. And it works in the center, it works on the edge, or further over to one side or another. So yeah, great little tool for if you ever run into this. All right, so now we got our top rail all welded on. So now we're gonna start tying our wire to our post and then start stretching it. So I got a 200-foot roll of no climb here. I'm gonna start tying this wire. From what I've found, it's just easier to have this roll standing up than laying down. Everybody has their own different opinion on it. But basically, what you want to start doing is just tying these ends. Once you get it unraveled, you're going to notice, at least this brand of wire has these basically longer sections of the runners, the wires, that you could start off your tie. So most rolls, from what I've seen and used, they have these longer strands to where you could start your tie once you open the roll. So we'll start off here. I've noticed too, a lot of times it's much easier to tie these when these are shorter. So I basically get my start going, test it, and kind of see like what's going to work best lengthwise. And then once I get that figured out, I just trim the rest of them down. Or when I start my tie, I trim them down. What you're going to want is some just adjustable pliers and then some cutters. These are both really all you're going to need to tie this wire. Definitely have some excess here. So what I do is normally wrap it around, and we'll get some close-ups of this too. Cut it to the length that I need, set my piece down, and then I start to tie the wire. I don't always start on the top wire. The reason for that, I just kind of work my way down. I'll do like one at the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom to start, and then I'll go back through and tie everything just so this roll's basically supported. But go here, bend a little 90-degree little piece so we could pull it around. All right, and I just kind of start these. I don't go like too tight or too crazy in the beginning. Just kind of get it all started. Get this wire, get this basically vertical stay in line. And once I kind of get that in line where I want it, then I start doing the rest of them. And you could even do this by hand. You don't necessarily always have to have pliers to start this. You can start it by hand, which isn't a bad thing too. Kind of makes it easy to bend this wire back around and cut them up and stuff like that. Right, and like I said, I normally do a top, bottom, and middle section to start, and then I go back through and do all of them. Just get this, like I said, get this fence basically in line where I want it. And then we'll move on from there. Come back over here, feed all my wires back through so I could start stretching the fence or start tying it. You can see we got to come along. So this is just one that I made. Pretty quick. Nothing too fancy. It's a hook. I know a lot of people use like a clamp type version, which is really cool. They work good. I've used them before. I don't stretch near as much wire as I do anymore, so I didn't have one. So I just made this one real quick. And we got our come along here tied on. So now we're just going to stretch this wire and get this line nice and tight. Stretching this no climb wire. Just come along. It's going to take a minute because a lot of slack in the line. As you can see, we got the wire stretched off the come along. Got it nice and tight. Now we'll start tying the wire. See here, I'm going to be tying to this post. Just a custom little thing I made. Welded it on. But we're going to tie to that post. So the first step that we're going to want to do is to cut all of these S knots off. You can see here we're going to go back and cut. We need to determine how much length we need, how much wire we're going to need here to wrap around this post. So we'll start off right at the post. So we'll start off here and we'll just cut these knots back. This is only 1 5/8, so I'm assuming I'm only going to need to cut 3 or 4 of these S knots off, and then I can go back and tie it. So just like we did when we started it, it's the same tie, but we got to cut all these S knots off. A really, really handy tool for this are these pliers here. Or sorry, not pliers, these cutters. They work really good. You can see at the end, they're almost like a bolt cutter, but they're super handy. They cut those S knots really easily. So let's get started on cutting those S knots, and then we'll get those S knots cut, and then we'll start to tie. So I got our first one cut. Like I said, I figured it was going to be about 4 strands of it. So we got that cut, and then I could go in and tie it. I'm going to kind of skip like I did in the beginning. I'm going to do a top, middle, and then bottom, and then I'll come through and do the rest. That way your tension just stays tight. If you start on the top and like work your way down, I don't know, to me it just seems like you kind of lose some of that tension. So we'll start here. You're okay to cut some of the verticals too, just to get them out of your way to tie the wire. That's all right if you want to move that. But we got our wire here. Pull it nice and tight. And then you're going to want to put a little bend in it. And then I like to just do a little 90-degree. That will allow you to tie. The top one closest to the top rail is always a little bit hard because that's obviously just in the way. But once you get past it, it's not too bad. So grab that 90, wrap it back around. Sometimes you could even kind of bend it around with your finger. But yeah, I normally try and get like 3 wraps. Voila. I always go more than less, just so you don't get caught having it too short. Pull it nice and tight. Put a little bend around there. Alright, that's good. Get it nice and tight. Pull it back around. Alrighty. And we're just gonna start continuing that. Now that I got a tie on the bottom, middle, and top, we're gonna just start continuing to do it like that.